and welcome to Career Bytes, a podcast and video series where I bring the best resources, guidance, and real-life advice to help you ace your career and ace your life. If you are a job seeker or are looking to pivot in your career, tune into these episodes or leverage articles on our website at careeracers.com, where we offer tips, tricks, and tools to ace your career journey. I'm your host, Polaki, and I'm excited to help you ace your career and your life. And with us today to help us is Karen Weeks. Welcome to the show, Karen. So happy to have you here today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. Karen, you mentioned that 20 years ago, you made a career change from theater to human resources and more recently to coaching and never looked back. So tell us more about this journey of yours. I'm super excited to learn more.
Yeah, I was that kid who was like the theater person. I listened to the soundtracks in the car. It was my profession. I went to every show whenever I could. And I loved what I did. But when it actually had to become my livelihood, it was very difficult. And I was having a really hard time balancing everything. It's like being an actor. You don't know where your next gig's going to be, if you're going to have one, how much is it going to pay? And that just wasn't what I felt comfortable with. And so I tried the business side of theater for a while and worked for a talent agency out in Hollywood. And that sort of removed all the fun and love I had for the arts because it was too business focused. So I sat there going, what the heck am I going to do? Like, this is my whole identity. And so it was really, really hard. And so I asked people for feedback around, what do you think I'm good at? I did some self-reflection about what did I actually enjoy? And after talking to a lot of folks, I figured out, I think this might be HR. I will make the move into the corporate world. And I loved it. I found a real passion for helping people in their careers. We all work way too much. So to be able to go to a job that you actually like with people you enjoy and a culture that feels supportive, that makes it sort of all worthwhile, considering I'm sure everybody wants to be doing other things than working. So 20 years later, I stayed in HR, obviously lots of transformation, within HR and different companies and continued reflection. And then I realized as much as I enjoy HR, I wanted the ability to help more people than just the team I was working for at that time. And so I started my coaching practice, and it really gave me a whole new energy and purpose to help people who were like me in that theater moment, or honestly different moments in my HR career where I felt stuck, plateaued, kind of at a crossroads, and helping them break free of that and really transform and figure out what makes them happy and fulfilled and feel successful. And it's been amazing.
Amazing journey. So over the past year, especially over the past year, our life has definitely changed. And so
Yes.
has our work life. So how do you think the pandemic has changed our career journeys? You've pivoted in the past. So how do you think this new virus that has wreaked havoc in our lives has definitely, changed our career journeys? What do you think it has done?
Yeah, I think there's two things that really stand out. One is people now can consider companies and roles that maybe they couldn't based on where they lived. So, I live in New York City, so there's obviously a lot of opportunities here, but, maybe for some reason I live somewhere in the Midwest and companies I've always admired didn't have locations there. That may no longer be an issue because so many companies are offering remote work, full-time, ongoing. So now I might have way more opportunities than I ever did. I think the other thing that people really took time to consider is in a global pandemic, when I'm stuck at home, maybe seeing other people impacted, either being laid off or illness, God forbid, it's a moment of self-reflection around, am I spending time doing something I actually care about? And if I have to choose between remote learning with my kids and work, or trying to figure out how to see family when I'm so far away from them, these are moments where what really matters to me and how do I actually want to spend my time? And I think that was the other moment that allowed people to self-reflect and say, maybe I don't actually like what I do, or, maybe I need to consider something that has more flexible hours or a more flexible schedule. So I think between those two things, people really took the opportunity to say, do I really enjoy what I do? Does this make me happy? Is this worth how I spend my time?
Very true. That has happened with me too in the past before the pandemic. So I can
Yeah.
really relate to that. So, searching for a new job, in the midst of this pandemic is one of the most exhausting and stressful things to do in life by itself.
Yes.
And then in the midst of this pandemic, I'm sure it's even more stressful. I know a lot of
Yeah.
folks who are in that boat.
Yeah.
And you know, when on the job hunt, mindset is everything. At least that's how I've seen it, and I've reflected on
Yes.
that. What's one piece of advice you have for job seekers who are looking for a new position in the midst of this pandemic and it's all
Yeah.
virtual?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually think the virtual piece helps because one of the biggest things is most people in today's world, not everybody, but most people get their jobs through some sort of outreach. It's not the typical, I went on, well, I was going to say Monster, but I don't even know if they exist anymore. You know, I
It
went
does,
on
it
X,
does.
yeah, I went on X website, I applied, a recruiter called me back. Like so much of it is networking. And so now with everybody so much more comfortable with virtual, reaching out to someone to say, you know, you're in a role that I'm really interested in learning more about, would love to hear what it's like for you and your day to day. Can we grab 15, 20 minutes for a virtual coffee? Or you work for a company that I really admire, would love to know what it's like to work there, to consider if I want to apply for one of the jobs. Or even you and I used to work together. We haven't talked in a long time. I'm considering a career change. I would love to get your perspective on it. And that virtual networking, while the purpose is to learn, most of the time it probably leads to either let me introduce you to someone who I know is hiring, or let me introduce you to the recruiter, or let me help you go down this path. If they're willing to talk to you, they're going to be willing to take it to the next step. And I think that is actually one of the best ways to navigate finding a job right now.
Absolutely. And you know, the video resume and the video interview is so much in use right now. So how do you think we can leverage technology to help us bring that personal brand to the fore in a video resume and a video interview? What are your tips and tricks for doing that?
Yeah, for me, it's about bringing the resume to life or bringing your story to life. So first of all, they get to actually see you. You know, using myself for example, I'm boisterous. Like you quickly see my passion for this stuff, and that may not come through in a resume because it's just a bunch of words that looks like someone else's resume. So you get to see me immediately. I think the other thing is it gives you a chance to really tell your story, especially if you're making a pivot or some sort of transition, or you are looking for a company that's not based where you are. It gives you a chance to tell that story in 30 seconds, a minute, where again, a cover letter may feel too formal or not as personal. I can tell you that live and you can hear it from my own voice. And I think that goes a long way to make it more connect with whoever's watching it.
Wonderful. And technology is definitely the enabler in this. Definitely.
Yes. It's amazing. And I know people are exhausted and Zoom fatigue and like all of that is true. I also think you don't have to overproduce it. Like grab your iPhone, sit outside with the sun on your face, and which so you're getting some vitamin D and it's healthy. And then you can just shoot a video real quick. It doesn't have to be this like overproduced thing when you're exhausted from sitting in front of your computer all day.
Absolutely. Really great tips there. So you wrote a book, and your
Yes.
book is called Setting the Stage, a guide to preparing for any feedback conversation. And I'm excited to offer this as a giveaway during this episode. So that's really great that you wrote this book. And as a new manager or as an experienced manager
Yeah.
who's been leading teams for years, giving feedback is always a daunting task. I think
Yes.
I've always seen that as a daunting task, even though I tried to make it really fun. But giving feedback is really a daunting task, and now we have this extra variable of the remote
Yeah.
workplace where we are all kind of disjointed and disconnected, and we have to do this online. So, how best do you think employees can prepare themselves for performance appraisals in this remote workplace?
Yeah, it's a great question because I do think not only is this virtual piece potentially adding some different dynamics, I think there's also just the human aspect for both managers and employees of how hard the last year was. And so I need to give feedback. I still need to have this performance evaluation or whatever different companies call it. But they also want to not be too harsh and and recognize everything that this person has probably been through. Or if I'm sitting in the employee seat, how do I share what this last year has been like with my manager as sort of like an explanation for some of the roller coaster moments without it making it sound like an excuse or the things people are always nervous about. So I think if it's possible, I mean, if you're about to sit down and give a performance review tomorrow, obviously it's not possible, but if it's possible, have these conversations leading up to things so that it's not just about the performance review. In your one-on-ones, have conversations around, how are you doing? How was this week? What was a win? What was a roadblock? How can I be helping you? Or if an employee, if you're the employee, this is what I could kind of use some extra support in this week, because it's going to change. So as much as possible, have those conversations first so that when you get to the performance review and giving more formal feedback, you've had that trust and you sort of have gone along the way. I think if you haven't had that, then open the feedback conversation with that. I realize this was a unique year. I really appreciate the support or this or that. Knowing where the different business priorities shifted, that was helpful. Anything that you can kind of do as an opening, and then you can go into the performance feedback. So do the human stuff leading up to it, even if it's the first 10 minutes of a performance review.
Great advice. So the pandemic, has definitely wreaked havoc on our mental health as well.
Yes.
And we're all kind of muddling through this time in our lives. Where do you see the greatest need for development for HR managers and HR professionals? Because you are an experienced one at that. So where do you see the greatest need for development for our colleagues?
Yeah. Number one, take care of yourself. We are taking care of everybody else. Role model the behavior you tell others. Carve out time on your schedule to not work. Find opportunities to, go for a walk or do whatever you need to do for your own mental health, and take vacation or at least time off. I know vacation's a relative term right now, but do the things you're telling your team to do. You need to do it yourself and for your own HR team. And then I think the other thing that I've actually seen come through is our roles have changed so much. Thinking about what we are trying to do strategically within our cultures now with all of this new workforce and new world that we're living in, think about how that can be more engaging for you and for your own development. And, maybe you are really leaning into some of the diversity and inclusion work that is coming out of the summer of last year, or maybe remote work is now like this new thing that you're super into, and that could be something. So think about what you've learned through this journey and where you've really found purpose. Wellness is another great example, and use that to propel your own development and make sure you're doing work that you enjoy. Not everything is going to be, sunshine and rainbows, and we all have to do stuff we don't like. But if the majority of our work is more purpose driven, that will be more meaningful for us as HR people too.
Absolutely. Great advice. Thank you for that. So on that note, we come to the question connection section of our conversation. So you get to connect with our audience. Who is one person in your network that you've gained in the past year or so that you think everyone should know in the coaching industry and the, in the professional development industry?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I love how it connects people. Julia Wench, who is at the Authenticity Guide, is the name of her company. She is a coach. She actually was on my podcast. She came from, healthcare and corporate America and consulting and everything you think you're supposed to do after you get your MBA from Duke. And she quickly, as she was going through her career and got into management, she realized, similar to me, she loved the development side of her manager conversations and hated all right, let's pull up your spreadsheet and look at your project plan and all that stuff. And she never liked that part. So she went out on her own, and she is just so purpose driven, and such joy, it's just joy and energy exudes from her when she works with her clients. She does speaking engagements, she does one-on-one coaching, she does workshops. So check her out, her website. I believe it's just theauthenticityguide.com, but Julia is amazing and would recommend her to everybody.
Thank you. We'll connect everyone through the show notes, and we'll post the links in our show notes to her profile.
Great.
What's your favorite career or work related podcast that you listen to and you think everyone should be listening to? I know you have one great podcast going in addition to that.
Yeah. So I actually jump around. The one I just listened to was the Harvard Business Review has a podcast specifically towards women in the workplace. And so I've been listening to that one a lot lately, which has been really helpful, both just for me, obviously, as a woman, but also thinking about the women on our team and how we can be better supporting them. Actually, our women's mentoring group listened to an episode as sort of like a book club, but a podcast club instead. But otherwise, I just kind of jump around and try to hear about podcasts that help us best support our teams and different experiences they may be going through. So that's just the most recent one I've been listening to the most.
Wonderful. That was my top recommendation last week as well. So there you go.
There you go.
So we've been asked to, kind of reskill and upskill ourselves this past year and into the future of work. What LinkedIn Learning or e-learning webinars do you think are out there for career professionals who want to, invest in their professional development and that you think we should all be watching?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it so depends on what you're trying to develop. There are, to your point, LinkedIn Learning and some places like that offer a wide variety of things. There's even things like Skill Pop and oh my gosh, I totally just blanked on the other one I was going to say. Skill Pop or Udemy or like any of those sort of Teachable, all of those sites have a lot of different skills. So I think first take a step back and figure out what is the skill you're trying to develop, and then find the right platform for that. Even if it's Excel, like Microsoft has free Excel videos. So I'm not trying to avoid the question and not give an example, but I think it just so depends on what you're trying to do. So figure out the skill you're trying to develop and then find the best platform that will teach that skill. Going back to what we were saying earlier, the good news is so much is virtual and so much is free right now that there's lots available to folks right now.
Absolutely. So any favorite book other than the one that we are going to give away today, related to career development or work life or even business that you would suggest to our audience?
Yes. So 10 years ago, I read a book called Leadership and Self-Deception. And it is all about putting yourself in other people's shoes, basically. And, when you run into someone and you're having a really hard conversation with them or a hard time relating to them or working with them, it's very easy to say, oh, why don't they do such and such? Or why are they being such a jerk? Or why this? And it's all about how do you take a step back and say, what is that person going through? And why are they coming to the conversation that way? Because clearly there's something I'm missing. It's, lead with good intentions, all of those sort of messages. And 10 plus years later, I still reference that book. I suggest it to other people. I will call out things and I'm like, oh, nope, get out of the box. Think about what they're going through. So that's one of the books I always recommend to people.
Wonderful. And we'll link that in the show notes as well.
Wonderful.
Where would you like to travel once this pandemic is kind of under control and we've all been kind of vaccinated? Hopefully soon.
Yes. So last summer, it was our 20th wedding anniversary, and we were going to finally take a trip, maybe to Ireland, or we've got friends in Poland. And so we've never done anything like that before. We were like, no, for our 20th, like this is something we're going to do. So hopefully when the world gets back to a safe place, we're able to do some sort of extreme trip like that. Honestly, I'd be happy just going upstate to New York to a cabin for a while, but that's the more exciting answer is some sort of trip overseas.
Well, cheers to that, and we hope it comes true soon.
Yes.
So how do you enjoy giving back to your career coaching community? I know you do a lot through your podcast and, your other endeavors, but how else do you like giving back to your community?
Yeah, so I really try to give a lot of free workshops. I did some pro bono coaching over the summer for HR people that were laid off during the pandemic. So yes, clearly this is a business and this is what we do, but there are times where you can offer something that can be really valuable and really helpful to someone who maybe can't, make an additional investment. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for us, whether through, podcast guests or webinars or free workshops or pro bono work when it feels appropriate to really help people. Because at the end of the day, hopefully people go into HR and coaching and all that to help people. And so finding opportunities to do that for our peers, especially, I think is really important, or people, like I said, who are impacted, in tough times.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all that you do for our community. I've been benefiting from that, and I'm sure a lot of our audience will benefit from today's podcast itself. So thank you. And if our audience would like to connect with you, what is the best way for them to reach you online?
Yes. So I have a website, karendweeks.com. And through that, there's a connect button and all that kind of good stuff. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably where I'm the most. I'm on every social platform, but LinkedIn is just probably naturally where I am the most frequently. Yes, I would love to connect with anybody, hear what you're going through, and see how I can help. Even just sharing free worksheets, like nothing, no commitment needed. Just let me know how I can help.
Thank you again, Karen, so much for being here today. I really appreciate you and your kind insights and inspiration to all our audience. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And audience, thank you so much for listening in. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.